Hi, everyone. Welcome to a TaxonWorks Highlights Quick Tour. When you first log in to TaxonWorks, in this case, we see favorites, things that we do often. We can add more tasks or more data access to tables in the database in our Favorites tab. Today, we're going to start by highlighting slides. For example, Grid Digitizer. Once you take a picture of your slide tray, you can now easily customize your slide workflow. You can move, for example, these red lines as needed to line up with your slide trays. And then each one becomes its own collection object record, and you can automatically assign unique identifiers to each one. For example, I put the starting number here. It computes the ending number. I'm able to say these have no slide by selecting none. And then I can click create, and it will tell me 9 objects will be created, catalog number will be added, and the preparation type selected here will be added. What if you have aggregates? These could be entomology drawers, for example. In this case, with Freeform Digitize, you can create collection object records for all specimens embedded in something, a drawer, or for example here, an aggregate fossil. Once created, we can move this piece wherever we need it to be. We can create a polygon if need be. And then we can associate metadata. We can identify it. We can assign the identifier for this collection object. There will be two things inside this collection object. And in this case, we can say something about the prep type and add additional metadata. We would click save, and those would create collection objects. Another digitization method that you might be using is this notion of also starting with an image, only in this case, you can create your own grid. So you may not have the same label types as shown here, but you can custom design inside our system the grid that you need. This is a collecting event label, a determination label, color chart, the specimens themselves, collection number, a scale bar, and metadata. Once you've done that, and you've taken a picture of that, in TaxonWorks, you've associated each one of these boxes with its data type, with its collection or its object type. So here you can actually customize the shape of your stage and what the software should expect to find in each section. And then when OCR runs, of course, it knows what it might expect there. So this is what it can look like. And then once this is in the system, you can actually look and see what the OCR was able to do for each block. And you can edit and or lock if you've taken a series of images. You can additionally add more metadata here as well. And click save and go on to the next image. You can also redo the OCR. So briefly, we went through, I'm going to digitize from slides, digitize from something like an entomology drawer or something like this aggregate fossil, to a way we could use a staged image. And now we're going to move on to what if I have a spreadsheet? So in this case, to import specimen or taxon name checklist data, we have a Darwin Core importer. The first thing you might notice here is this bar across the top with the red line. This status bar shows us that 313 records were imported, 55 errored. Here, you can actually sort to find which ones are errored. And for each one, you can see the error message. And anytime a record is errored and wasn't entered, you can actually edit the fields here, allowing you to edit and then possibly retry at that point. Something else to note here is that you can download your original file that you uploaded at any time. Then You might like to look at the record. So here we can go from, say, browse or import. And for each one of these, we can open them up and get an idea of what they look like in Browse Collection Object. Here we can see what was in those temporary fields I mentioned, the buffered fields. We can see the collecting event, the georeference. We can see all the Darwin Core fields that would go to GBIF. And in fact, once the record is published and gone out the door, you can see what your record looks like in GBIF. From here, perhaps you would like to see how this object is connected. So there's a collection object, but there's a collecting event object, there's a georeference, there's a determination. We can look at this record visually in the task called Object Graph. We can follow this from the bottom of the taxonomic tree here along the lines to see, oh, currently this has an identification. This is it. It was done by Chris Dietrich. You can also see that for this particular specimen, it also has the information associated with who collected it, the fact that it's georeferenced, and it has at least 3 different identifiers, noting that we can store multiple identifiers for a given object in TaxonWorks. This allows you to quickly sort of see and understand, and also note perhaps if something's missing or needs to be changed, because you can visually see the connectedness. From inside the database, thinking also about the work done, what about your need to figure out who's doing what where and what's inside your database? We offer many ways to explore, edit, and review data and the work being done. So one example would be project vocabulary. And in here, we can show you what's in a particular field and how many times that value is there. So going back to our view here, perhaps you want to know in the determination labels, how many strings say this? Well, in this example, we can see that Charles A. Bridges is listed in the so-called buffered field here, buffered determinations, 2,500 times. That means we can now create a subset of records by clicking on it here or clicking here, and we can open just those records and add that data to the determination, who did the determination. Here we can do the determination and the person who did it. So this is a way to quickly find and update, add information to your records, starting out when you have skeletal records where you have OCR data. What about the work being done and the many people who are doing just this kind of task? There, we can see there are many different kinds of tasks, and one of those is the week in review. Indeed, we can see in this test database, in this case, that I've added 2 records and 1 image. And if I click there, we could actually see those records. That ends our quick tour. I would like to leave you with a final opportunity to do a lot more. 1, exploration, if you would like a sandbox, and an opportunity that's coming up here at the very beginning of May to join us for TaxonWorks Together, our annual event where we learn a lot about what's happened in the past year, what's coming up next, and we join our sort of local needs to global events to cover topics of interest to many of us. So here I invite you to explore, figure out who you might be expecting to speak and what they're going to talk about. For example, transition, getting your data from one database to another, or getting your data out of something and into something else, out of text, for example. What's new in Taxon pages? So that's our public face for the data that's inside TaxonWorks. Perhaps you're interested in field stations, eDNA, geospatial information. Perhaps you're interested in the engineering part of the software and what do we do to sustain open source based science. I invite you to join us. If you have any questions, happy to take them now.